Okay, so in this video, we're going to talk about the innate immune system in a little bit more detail. Before we begin, let's talk about the difference between innate and adaptive. Innate are the non-specific things that your body has to defend itself that responds immediately to different pathogens. And this includes your skin, your mucous membranes, different cells like macrophages, different chemicals, different physiologic responses like getting a fever that protect you. The adaptive, on the other side, you can see it, is specific. Specific cells that respond to a specific part of a foreign particle called an antigen. It includes the T cells, the B cells, and the antibodies that are produced. So this video is going to be about the innate immune system. So we're going to talk about the different physical barriers, chemical, biological barriers to letting things into the body. So you should be able to describe them, categorize them, and then describe the cells that function, the specific types of cells. Also talk about inflammation, the steps of inflammation, and the benefits of the inflammatory response and why we even have it. Because it doesn't seem like a good thing at the time. You're like, this hurts. Why is this a thing? And then the benefits and the risks associated with a fever that you sometimes get if you have an infection. It can kind of accompany an infection. So characteristics of innate immunity. It prevents things from getting in. And it responds non-specifically, like I said before. And the first line of defense, so the answer here, and you can see it down here too as well. I don't need to type it out for you. But so the first line of defense is considered your skin and then your mucous membranes that line your body cavities or the outside of your body. Everything else in the innate immune system is grouped in what's called the second line of defense. So if something gets through the skin or gets past the mucous membranes, then the second line of defense will activate. This includes cells, chemicals, different processes, physiological processes. So, not many microbes, things that can harm you, can get through the skin. Your epidermis and dermis does a good job. The keratin is strong. There's bacteria that live on your surface. That's good bacteria that helps prevent things from getting in. Lysosome is an enzyme that's actually on your skin and in your tears that kills bacteria. It also contains a specific antibody. Sebum is the oil on your skin, and that actually has antimicrobial properties. And overall, it just helps prevent bad things from growing. Skin is good, very protective. Also, the mucous membranes. So mucus is sticky, and it traps things and sweeps it down to your stomach if it gets caught in your nasal passage, so the stomach acid can destroy it. The mucus itself has antimicrobials in it, and the mucus has harmless bacteria, and then the word here is suppress the growth of more virulent types. So that would be the types that could harm you more. So the specific cells in the innate immune system, so they engulf. The word here is engulf. So they, like a Pac-Man or Pac-Woman, they find something bad, they take it in by something called phagocytosis. Think of a Pac-Man. And when that thing is inside of the body, there's enzymes that degrade it and break it down. That process produces pus, and as a result, that's why pus is the result of bacteria and the phagocytic cells, like neutrophils and macrophages are very phagocytic, known for that role in the body. Dendritic cells are also a type of white blood cells. They're going to have a very specific job. They also can be phagocytic, and they present, the word here is antigens are presented. So it takes something bad in, this bad expo marker, let's say it's bacteria, and it engulfs it, destroys this part of it through enzymes, and presents the antigen, which is the foreign part of that bacteria. And that dendritic cell will then become what's called an antigen-presenting cell. take it in the lymphatic system, find a T lymphocyte, and say, look what I found. And it will activate that T lymphocyte into the specific immune system, the adaptive immune system. And side note, macrophages can also do that job. And this is a great picture that shows a dendritic cell. The little green part is the antigen, like the cap of this expo marker that it's presenting. And here is a phagocytic cell, how it engulfs something, destroys it, and exits it. Does it doing its job. Okay, so other cells involved in the non-specific immune system are basophils and mast cells. When I think of basophils and mast cells, I think of allergies, which I am very familiar with. So basophils are in the blood, mast cells are in connective tissue, your mucus, your internal organs. What they do is when they come in contact with, well, in my case, allergens or anything that is bad, or your body thinks is bad, they release granules, little particles. And these particles have chemicals. And these chemicals increase the movement of fluid. So it causes fluid to move out of the blood and into the tissue. These chemicals also are chemotactic, meaning they tell other cells to go help, come to this area because it's damaged. They also release two different chemicals that have specific jobs. The first one is histamine. You can write it down there, histamine. And histamine is probably a word you've heard before. Histamine increases vasodilation, so causes the blood vessels in that area to get larger, and it increases the capillaries of the blood vessels, okay, permeability. So it makes them a little bit wider to let large white blood cells in to the area. Histamine, you've probably heard of an antihistamine. In allergies, you take antihistamine to deafen the effects of histamine. Another chemical released from basophils and mast cells is called heparin. I'm also very familiar with heparin. Heparin is an anticoagulant, so it prevents blood from clotting. Ooh.
Oh, video, you dumb.
Ooh. Oh my goodness. That was funny. Okay. I was calling my video dumb. Okay, so here's another great pictorial of how the basophil, what it releases, histamine, heparin, and how those affect the blood vessels. Dilates them, increases the permeability, and helps it prevent it from clotting. So that blood, they're going to cause more blood to get to that area that's infected or damaged. Think about a cut in the wound or a cut in the skin. More blood coming to that area. Okay. Another type of cellular defense is called a natural killer cell. And these are immune surveillance cells, so they kind of traverse through the blood and lymphatic system and look for potential bad things, and they take them out. Boom. They're always working. They're non-specific. They take out unhealthy cells that look unhealthy. So cells that are infected with viruses, cells that are infected with bacteria.
At this time, we need sophomores A through G to get their computer and head down to the training center for registration.
Cells infected with tumor or tumor cells, that's what that blank is, and or cells of transplanted tissue. So that's how organ transplants are, how they don't work sometimes, is these natural killer cells know that they're foreign, they can tell, and they start attacking it. They release, again, chemicals that essentially punch holes. Lots of things going on. Okay, so this is a bad cell, right? So the natural killer cells punch holes in it. They release a chemical called perforin that literally like punches holes in it, and then it releases a chemical that goes into those holes and causes it to die by apoptosis. Not again, not again. Oh, dang it. All right, back. So there's a picture of the perforin the little bullets, and then the granulozyme is the chemical that goes into the cell, and then it dies by apoptosis. That's how natural killer cells work. Interferons are a class of cytokine. You don't really need to know the details of that, except it's a chemical, and different types. Interferon alpha, interferon beta are produced by white blood cells, leukocytes, and virus-infected cells. So these are chemicals white blood cells release. Cells that are infected are like, dang it, we're infected, and they're sending out these chemicals. What happens is an array of different things, but essentially it's going to stimulate more white blood cells to get to that area to help out in that situation. So here's a normal cell, here's an infected cell. It's releasing these interferons, stimulating more white blood cells like natural killer cells, macrophages, to come to that area to help. Speaking of stimulating many things to happen to eliminate the bad things that are potentially invading you, like this expo marker, is something called the complement. Now, the complement system is a series of different chemical reactions that involves proteins in the body. And they're numbered: complement, number 2, protein, etc. And you see this word cascade. It's a cascade is a series of events that once one thing happens, and the next thing will happen, and so on and so forth. And the response builds as it cascades down. And it's very potent against bacterial infections. So what are some details of that, what's called the complement system? Well, the complement system can activate something called opsonization. Essentially, here is the pathogen, and it has the antigens on there in green. It gets sticky. This opsin, part of the complement, makes it sticky and more likely for this macrophage to find it. That's opsonization. Inflammation is increased as a result of complement. Inflammatory response brings more blood. With the blood comes more white blood cells that you can see there. Another thing that complement does, here again is our pathogen, our evil expo pen, and we have the antigens in green there. What complement can do is attach this, what's called a MAC protein, to it, which will split that target cell. So here's our target cell, essentially causing the cell to burst or split apart. That's destroying it. Another thing complement can do is, here is our antigen, so that's our pen cap, and there's our antibody. When they're combined, so here's our antibody, antigen, okay, this is from your body, this is not. When they're combined, it's called a complex, an antibody-antigen complex, okay, so there's that. Complement can bind to that, okay, and link different complexes together, making them, and then hook them to red blood cells. The red blood cells will eventually be routed to the liver and the spleen, in which those antigens can be removed from the body. So the complement, 4 different specific things that complement can lead to, and there's good pictures to explain that. Another non-specific thing, okay, that's cells, that's specific proteins that can help in the innate immune system. Next, we're going to talk about physiological processes. The first is inflammation. Inflammation is an immediate response to ward off unwanted substances. Write down vascularized. So tissue that has blood supply, this is where inflammation happens. So what happens is your tissue is injured, like, your skin. You cut yourself shaving, which happens, right? So what happens is a lot of blood rushes to that area. The blood are carrying white blood cells, like the ones you see here. and the response is initiated